welcome everybody to the Ballad of the Menagerie. When we last left off our misfit heroes, they had just completed a job. They had just managed to survive the wrath of a troll, and were had gone heading back to the city of Arl, and were going to their ship. So maybe like the cutaway card, the big card is like, you know, Arl, or this planet Akaton City, Arl, and then like it's an overview of like what looks like this, large city in the middle of a blasted wasteland. There's some walls up around it in most places, and there's an element of it that looks, of course, a little bit beat up and run down because it's essentially, a high tech modern city that has elements of like more traditional rural sort of things on the end skirts of it, set right in the middle of a blasted wasteland. Economic with this economic and environmental decline that the planet is in and what have you. And we kind of zoom in kind of fast down to the menagerie, the ship called the Menagerie. And we see that the Menagerie is this ship that's kind of been, most of the frame is from, an old Cavalry Venture freighter, but, there are bits and pieces from others, from other ships that have been, sort of like piecemealed together on this. And we kind of cut away as the camera zooms towards the outer hull and comes up real close to like the word the namesake painted on the side, the Menagerie, just in basic letters or whatever. We cut away to inside, um, where our crew happens to be at, and you all kind of are at a crossroads here because you've finished a job, you've got a couple of connections, you could continue to do jobs here on Akaton, but you have a ship, so you can fly around now. You can fly off to. You could decide to go to any of the planets in the Pact worlds. You could decide to head off to the Marixa Republic or the Gitteron Authority or the Vescarium or any number of other places that you might be trying to that you might decide to go. You could even go to the sun, to the star of this system, the burning archipelago. Is a city within the sort of outer corona of the sun, and nobody knows exactly who built it or why, but there is civil once it was discovered, and scientists move in, and then corporations moved in, and then there are people just sort of live there, and shit goes on there. And at this point, the scientists are still trying to figure out who built it and why, and trying to do all the exploration that goes along with it, figuring out what the deep cultures within it are. But that's a place you could also go to as well. But you are on Akaton, the planet of absolute decline, economic and environmental. You know, you have Thobus Greenfellow, the halfling, sort of shyster lawyer that that you guys have done some work for. Poetry and Prose, the human twins who are building a gladiatorial school to for whatnot. But that's by no means all inclusive of everything that you guys could do or where you could go. You also have a few credits in your pocket. You could go shopping, try to buy some stuff, and you also have a new member of your crew that is sort of getting acclimated as well. The in Tiz that is there as well. So you're on your ship, and I think maybe we'll set the scene as you guys are kind of on the bridge. And I don't know if you guys are here because you just sort of informally, all of you checking shit on the bridge for your various jobs or whatever, or if you're kind of or if you called some sort of meeting. But this is just sort of where you at the moment.
Okay.
And I'm going to hand the scene over to you guys and let you guys discuss what your next move is.
Say we fly around for a week just for the fun of it.
You know what? Actually, let's do a quick introduction to the characters. Maybe we get like that comic book freeze framey thing, like we get Shadow, the Patra, who looks like a humanoid panther, the captain of the group that and it says shadow across the top, and it says captain underneath in parentheses, and then we flash over to Shess, our Lashunta pilot, uh, humanoid, woman with like large antennas, very attractive. Um, that and it says Chess pilot, and then we fly over. We sort of like scan over, and there's a bear, a big fucking brown bear in a lab coat. Um, and it says Oliver Byrne at the top, and in parentheses underneath it, it says never bring a knife to a bear fight. and the and then and in the double parentheses underneath it, it says science and medical officer. And then we flash over to Tiz, which looks who looks vaguely humanoid, except there is no real expressive face. And at closer inspection, Tiz is not so much a human type, but a human, but had simply sort of has that humanoid shape. It's Tiz is a swarm of insects that just sort of like form this body together. Um, and in the bottom under it says Tiz up top, and then underneath it says in parentheses
Buzz.
engineer buzz. It says buzz underneath. It says engineer, mechanic, and what have you, and then I'll let you guys have the scene. Sorry. So what is the discussion? What is the agenda? Who, like, you guys are all on board the bridge?
So we need to come up with our next job, or do you people want to wait around for Greenfield to come up with something?
Green Fellow or Poetry and Prose.
Yes, or wait till Poetry and Prose finds another troll in their base.
Oh, please no.
No. No troll.
We do not like trolls.
I think we're all in agreement on that one.
Very much so.
I always wanted to go look at a different random world, just for the fun of it. You know, just so I can fly.
Well, random is not necessarily the best thing. Perhaps we could pick some place where we have a good idea that there are jobs.
Well, probably the best places to find jobs in in the packed worlds anyway are going to likely be the more inhabited places with more civilized. Going to Octurne is not likely going to turn up anybody who's going to pay you for anything you want to do necessarily. But you could easily probably find work. If you go to Absalom Station, you could find Abalon. Has some of the most just courts in the entirety of the packed worlds. Potentially some the AIs and the AIs and androids and SROs that live there may have some work. There's Castrovel, which is Shess's home planet, where the Lashuntas and the elves and the Formians live, and there are advanced civilizations there. Although um, getting into Soiverian and getting jobs from the elves may prove problematic, since they tend to not like outsiders. Versis. Versis is a tide-locked world, and the Ring of Nations in sort of the in sort of like the sort of termination zone between like the cold and the hot side, where there is actual civilization and what have you. Um, there is there's they have a there that's the birthplace of cybernetics, most people believe, and there's a lot of corporations that work out of there. Eox, of course, the planet of the undead. They have jobs too, and believe it or not, for the ill reputation that undead have, they are they abide by the Pact World's, sort of like charter, and they, within the, the reason, and there's work to be found there. You could go to Triaxis and see about getting some work there with the Ruforians and the, dragon blooded and humans that live there. And there's also Aposte, where the Drow elves have sort of taken over a world, a planet that has ancient technology that, again, some lost civilization left behind, and they, have taken this world over and do a lot of arms manufacturing and mining the depths of this planet for all of this ancient technology they're trying to crack. Um, and those are your probably, or you could go to the Adari and the world ship of the Adari and talk to the Kasathans and see if there's any work there to be had. Um,
Okay, random thought. I'm gonna text Artress and be like, "Hey, how you doing?"
Who?
you send her a message. All right, yeah, I think Artress doesn't immediately get back to you, but she probably will. It'll take a bit to get to her. Um, because Starfinder doesn't exactly have subspace the way that Star Trek does. Basically, it kind of has to take a minute to travel through the info-nets, and be carried from one info-net to another for each planet. Um, because it's basically like every planet's got their own internet, essentially. Um, but as far as and it'll only take a few days for the stuff to get back and forth since you're still in the packed worlds right now. The farther
I,
out, the farther out you get, the longer it'll take.
Only a few days.
I know. Random thought. I decided to send it out, but
Okay, yeah.
still, then look at the captain and be like, "All right, what's your view, dude? Where do you want to go?"
Yes, Captain. Where would you like to go?
Well, let's see. We want someplace with an abundance of new and different life forms for you, Oliver.
His eyes widen.
You, Chess just wants to fly, which means anywhere. Just what would you be looking for?
We just want to search.
Just search any planet?
Correct.
Wonderful. Wherever there's the most bodies. People. I mean,
The most bodies. That didn't sound dark at all.
It sounds like Castrovel might work. I mean, it has 3 dominant life forms running it, and it's a jungle world, so there's going to be lots and lots of creatures, right?
he finger guns at you from the corner.
Alright. Cool.
Or
Yeah.
she finger guns your way like, got it. I was just like, I was watching his camera and he just finger guns. So I was like,
Me too.
that's what she does. And okay.
All right. Then it sounds like Castrovel is our next destination.
Alright, so you're gonna head off to Castrovel. Question, real quick. Are you guys gonna use drift drive or are you going to go vis-a-vis normal thrusters and travel?
What's the
It
time difference?
It could potentially be shorter through drift drive, but not by a lot.
I'm gonna say, are we in a big hurry? And
Not really.
then we can just do regular, and I can enjoy my flight.
And I could run scans on all of you.
Indeed.
As he says all of you, he looks towards his location.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, this is a life form you haven't seen very many of. The Spathinae, the living colonies. Um, yeah. Right
I
on.
make
So
no reaction to the comment.
no reaction. Right on. All right. So, are you guys gonna do any shopping before you leave planet, or are you gonna wait until you get to Costerville, or are you going to? Is that even on the docket at all?
uh, For when it comes to UPBs, those are 1-to-1 with credits, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yes.
Do-do-do-do. I'm trying to remember. Oh, archives of Nethys. That's what I use. I wanted to look up what healing
And
serums cost. I should probably restock a couple of those.
and what is your drone spider doing? Where's
Uh,
your spider
ma-
at?
Mainly, it's in the room in the quarters.
Oh, okay.
Are there at this point? Do I have any plants or anything in that room?
You pretty much just got back to the ship at this point. So no, I mean,
Alright.
if you guys want to do, if you guys want to take the time to stock up that stuff, that's certainly something you can kind of do. I'm assuming you have enough, rations on the ship to get you guys to the next jump point.
Yeah, especially since Shadow bought 100 rations.
Yeah, I was like, Shadow kind of stocked us up on that pretty well.
I saw
Right.
100 rations on there, and I was like, oh,
I cannot find where serums of healing are listed. Under what
They
type of item?
should. They're in the core.
Maybe
So,
technological items?
possibly. I can't remember. They're. Uh,
That page won't load
I
up for
know
me.
for MK1, I'm pretty sure if they're for MK1s, they're 50 apiece. For MK2s, I don't remember.
also, what would I need to do in order to make a still?
To make a what?
A still.
He wants
A
to
still?
brew.
Ah, yes. I think if you spend about, you know, I think if you spend about 50 UPBs and the time to build it, then that's easy enough. That's just basically, I'm gonna go make a still, and you don't even need to make a skill check for that. It's just taking the time to do it.
I'd probably do it. I may have heard about other life forms enjoying alcohol, and I'd probably consider the materials that my body produces as waste. But fermenting it would probably make some people happy.
There it is.
Let's see.
Oh god, Mark 2s are 425. Talk about a mark up. Ha!
Bad. Yeah.
They're also only
Mm.
3 times the healing for like 8 times the cost. But you can.
Serums of Healing is on page 225.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I'm showing
There we
222,
go.
oddly enough. But that's the core. I don't know. That's what Archives of Nethys says. So
Yeah. So
I'll
you
probably
would
make some
know.
more regular, just basic ones.
You would know that probably it depends on like what and who you're like where you're going to visit out at. But if you want to go to um, Asana, where the Lashentas are, which are probably going to be the most friendly, Kabarat is the biggest port.
The cabaret, gotcha.
Cabaret, Kabarat. Uh,
Wow, I don't have to even spend any credits. I have 325 UPBs. I can make 5 more serums of healing, leaving me with 75 UPBs.
There's no special process to convert credits into UPBs or anything.
I mean, essentially, it basically is you guys go out and you go somewhere and you buy scrap.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's essentially what it is. I mean, UPBs are universal building blocks that you can build anything out of. It's kind of like getting the shit for a 3D printer, almost. It's kind of what you're doing. Uh, so, I mean, if you guys are going out to get some exchange some shit over to UPBs and what have you, then you probably have a couple hours still here in Arl, taking care of business and what have you.
Taking care of
Like to
business.
like to go ahead and get some UPBs then, and um, maybe some like plants and whatnot from this world, put it in for me for to maintain in my quarter.
This is something you guys, talk about together. Like, hey, before we leave, you know,
I mean, he wants to gather herbs and shit. Oliver's like, oh yes, definitely. If you want to grow those in your own quarters, that is 100% okay with me, as long as I have access to them when I need them. To make medical things, of course.
you know, um, and bear in mind, you still have those empty Voost vials too, inhalers too.
Yeah. I don't know what can I do with those. I guess I can put nether inhalant inside of them.
Yeah,
Uh,
pretty much. And Voost is a cheap enough low-level drug that you could probably manufacture that.
yeah. I might work
What
on
have
that.
it?
Is it an actual thing that's listed in the core rulebook, or is it just something you have?
No, no,
Okay.
it's just something narratively I've put together. If do you have what kind of? I think probably if you are looking to make Voost would count as a stimulant, but it would count as like a tier one stimulant, and it would or maybe not a stimulant, maybe an excitant. I think, but it's going to be like a tier one, and it's probably going to be I don't know. For intents and purposes, if you're looking to make some to sell, I would just say either a profession drug dealer check or a medical check, a medicine check used like a profession check and a week's worth of work, and you can make some credits. And the roll will represent the credits you make after buying all of the goods, all of the raw materials, and the bribes to law enforcement, and all of the paying runners and stuff like that. Basically, instead of trying to track down, okay, you have to pay this much for this and this much for that, and then brought this much in bribes, and then you sell it for this much. I'd rather just put that into sort of like mechanically just settle that with one roll rather than a bunch of like
Right.
tracking various prices on various things. So if you're looking to be like, I want to make drugs to sell to make profit, we can essentially just, um, but we can essentially break the narrative down to the mechanics down to a roll, and then, whatever you make on the roll is what you made after your overhead costs, rather than trying to figure all that shit in.
Right. Now I think.
So, are we actually going to be heading towards like making this ship like an interstellar drug and alcohol running type?
No, that's not Oliver's. I was actually going to ask two things. First, how long of a flight is it to Castroville?
Well, it's going to be random. It's going to depend on the
Ah,
piloting check, and it's going to depend on a roll, because space is weird like that. It's going to take a few days.
okay.
Uh,
Because Oliver's more going to focus on refining the Voos into, like you said, a basic stimulant, but more of a medicinal style stimulant.
right,
So it's
right.
no longer like an inhaled, like,
Okay.
drugs. It's
In
more of
that
a. Because that would be
in
like
that
his medical thing instead of drug selling.
right in that case, then we will need to track the UPBs for like a tier one excitant or stimulant, and I think that's
150.
going to be the armory is probably where you're going to, because I think
Yeah,
that's where
it's
have stimulants and
133
excitant.
on the armory. Its price for a tier 1 is 150.
Yeah, so you'll have to spend the UPBs, which in this case will be like the very specifically like because it's an inhalant, probably whatever plants and gases that you might need. Well, whatever you need to do to whatever stuff you need to break down into gases, liquids, and plants and whatnot. But you'll definitely have to pay the UPB price on that then. Um, but yeah, but yeah, you could spend some time doing that kind of stuff. I mean, you do have a custom micro lab, which means you can sort of negate the need to have like bigger facilities for that. And Does I know the Menagerie has a tech lab. Did you guys put
Science.
a science? You did
Yes.
put a science lab on there. Okay, so you also have a science lab. So
Yeah.
um,
It's got a
yeah. So,
science and a tech lab, which is very good. And then eventually we'll probably want to get a medical bay. But this will work.
well, eventually a medical bay is going to be something that you're going to get when you upgrade your frame to a large
Yeah.
size ship. But um, the by that point, hopefully you're high enough level. Your custom micro lab acts as a medical lab.
I think eventually it does. It just gets to the point where it's a full medical lab.
Yeah, I think I think it's like third level. It becomes the equivalent of an advanced med kit, and then beyond that, it then I think it's like ninth level. I want to say where it becomes the equivalent of a full medical lab. Um, but when it becomes an advanced med kit, you can use it at like a you can use it to treat to you can use it like a medical lab for a single patient. Set up like a triage station kind of situation,
Yeah.
um, like a single person deal. Um, but you also have some of you are going back, back out to get UPBs and what have you. What are the rest of you doing while they're doing that?
I sit in my pilot seat and wait for everybody to get their crap together so I can fly.
You just sit there in the pilot seat for a couple hours, just really anxious.
Shadow's trying to perfect the announcement audio for his new show from the well, you know. Hello, my fans. It is me, the Silken Purr, and I'm changing my show a bit for everyone. I now the captain of a ship, and I will tell you all about my adventures.
Nice, fucking reality show. That's awesome.
Oh
Fucking
wow.
Just he's a podcaster.
nice. That's awesome. All right. Cool, cool. So I assume that when you hit new info nets, you like download stuff to sites to various sites there, what have you.
Yeah.
I think
Uh,
I'll work on making certain
like here's my
serums.
week's worth of stuff I did while I was traveling in space. You know, um, here's a here's the greatest hits highlights of all the pranks I played on my crew. Every time that I set the red alert button off and pissed everyone off.
Yeah.
um, awesome.
What's the world that we're currently on called?
Akaton.
Acton, thank you.
I think
It's
I'll also make a couple doses of lingo serum.
okay.
It's not like
Hmm.
it allows you to use the Xenoseeker's themes quick pigeon benefit, which is literally
Ah,
allows you to, if you can't share a language or something, you can spend 10 minutes developing a call it um, spend 10 minutes attempting to converse. If they're willing, you make a DC 25 culture check. If you succeed, you formulate a simple pigeon language that allows basic communication,
okay.
just in case.
Just in case you don't know enough languages.
Yeah.
All right. Um, I think as you're out and about, like there's a great deal of there's obviously a lot of noise in the marketplaces and the sort of like downtown area, you know, depending because this is a city where there is a marketplace sort of on the sort of outer edges or in the lower income areas, but there's also a downtown area that resembles more of a shopping district. And I think while you're kind of walking around downtown, um, Tiz and Oliver, while you guys are out like getting supplies and what have you, you do see um, you do see on the local news that you see reports have come in that the infamous pirate captain the infamous pirate Captain Zyval Veto is back in the Pact Worlds. Pact World, there were protests on the Idari and on Absalom Station and on Versailles, given the war crimes of the Captain Volvetto, it's very controversial at the moment why they have offered why the Adari has offered diplomatic immunity to the to the Blue Ember. Reports say that it has something to do with the traditional Kasathan funeral. And there's just this thing going on, like they're talking about like the war out in some of the outer colonies is like and kind of highlighting that what sort of the villainy of the fire strike blowing up. Of course, when they talk about the protests on Versailles, they show like the footage of the fire strike, you know, blowing up, fighting bounty hunters and law enforcement officials, and blowing up shit in a manufactory. When they talk about the protests on Abalon or Absalom Station, they show footage of the crew of the fire strike shooting up the Hollow Vita wards. And they're like, in other news, the terrorist known as Evan Saval has turned state's evidence against Next Step, and there has there Zach Guzler, in a rare Zach Guzler has the Pact World Security for Special Security Forces issued a statement earlier today. It's a sad day. It's a sad day when we are accepting the word of well-known terrorists to and offering these kinds of deals to them in exchange for information that we could easily find out ourselves. It is my opinion that he should be locked up on Dagox 4 and left there and forgotten about. And he like it cuts away to like another talking in other news, and they start talking about like the Tabori cluster and like Aslanti Empire aggression in the area. And there's just sort of like this newscast of all the things going on in the universe right now. Like there's an announcement for a concert for Laser Loves Lucy is playing at Songbird Station in the diaspora. Um, you know, Various stuff going on around.
Hmm.
Did you see that general transmission? I mean, that Zy Velveto should be Sly Velveto. He's got so much press. Man, I wish I could get that face.
So I just found something called Serum of Hibernation, which just sounds like an Oliver thing.
Serum of I'm having trouble hibernating. I think I need a serum.
It's like hibernation. You just go into a death-like trance for uh, level 1, which is probably the only one I could get. It's 2d4 days, and if you wake up before then, you actually suffer 1 temporary negative level and are exhausted.
Oh God. He's
Uh,
just like, I'm gonna get some a serum of hibernation.
but yeah,
It's awesome.
I like it.
But I think you guys kind of make your way back to the ship. Those of you who are out and whatnot.
I make
Unless you,
macros on the control panel so I can have little shortcuts for different things on the thing while everybody's out. Make little macros and stuff to where it'll move.
Make it easier
give
to.
me a computers check. Do you have computers as a skill?
4, 4, 4, 4 times.
I got a 1 in it.
Give me a. Yeah, you get about half. You're sitting there. You're sitting there trying to set these macros up, and you realize that the drift drive is just not going to align with is something in the programming loop, and it's probably to do with the nature of the fact that the ship is sort of like patched together. That something in the computer system. I think it probably the computer back talks you on this. Isn't like you get a message that's like error suggested suggested symbol is incorrect, and it's just like picks a random symbol out of your code that's just like that it has decided not to recognize. you know
There's a
All right,
there's a
that was fun.
serum of appearance
Yeah.
change level 1. It just lets you change like uh, your features instantly and permanently as long as it's normal for your race and sex. So like I can change my hair color to black and just be a black bear for a while, and then
You could.
and the next day I'm a panda bear.
That's awesome.
It's like, what are we gonna walk out to today? Oh, and he's a panda bear. Okay.
That's wonderful. I love it. I'm all about it. You should start making those in your free time just so you can do that.
Nah. It's tempting actually to make a couple for other people. It's not something Oliver would do as much, but he might understand if someone wants to change their appearance. It doesn't like let you. People can still recognize you. Uh, you have to make a disguise check to actually, make it so you can be less recognizable normally.
Yeah, I think it gives you like a bonus on the check or something, right?
Not even that. Uh,
Mm.
Let me go back to I accidentally closed it because I wasn't. It's you are still recognizable as yourself unless you attempt a disguise check to alter your features enough to conceal your identity, comparing the result of this disguise check to any effort to determine if you are the same person. It's like you have to save that as your permanent disguise check. And in no
Okay, I
case
see.
can you take on the exact appearance of another creature, even with a disguise check.
Yep, yep. All right. I think if you, unless you guys do something else, while you're out, like go watch a gladiator game or some gladiatorial games or something like that. I think it goes fairly uneventfully, and you manage to make it back to the ship with your supplies and what have you. Um, you guys are flying to Casterville. I am gonna need a piloting check from your pilot. Okay, well, it's um the ship your for the first try your first try, and this is maybe the ship is being stubborn still. um like you go to turn the thrusters on, and maybe this has to do with like the macros you were trying to put in earlier. And like one thruster starts to fire, and the other one and the other one doesn't, and like a fire safety suppression system goes off in the cargo bay. Like the code the part of the code it's not trying to recognize actually just like instead turned on something else that you weren't intending to. You have to shut the engines down before you like tear the ship apart. Like, would you like to try that again?
Okay, reset the
Yes,
default
what are you doing
settings.
to the ship?
What is going on up there?
You actually see this because you're like, I'm assuming you probably are close to the engine bay or something, but you actually, or maybe even the cargo bay, but this is something that you're like, wait a minute, what the fuck is going on? All right, that gets it going. The fire suppression system still goes off again in the cargo bay, though. That's.
Oh,
Don't worry, I'm still getting used to this thing.
Well, that's.
I don't think that's supposed to have anything to do with flying the ship.
Let me give you a roll here to see how many days it's going to take you to get to. Um,
45 days later, because we somehow fell
Castrel.
through a wormhole.
It takes you about 4 days. So you're 4 days in space, kind of going and whatnot.
my first act of order is or point of order is to fix the fire suppression system, and then my second will be to start setting up
Start setting up what just in general.
the still.
Oh, okay. All right. So give me a roll for the fire suppression system. Let's see if you can get that under control here real quick.
Would that be engineering?
That would be engineering. the fire suppression system goes off on you.
I I think at this point, like,
Shadow wants to check the macros for something that might do that.
Give me a computer's check.
oh boy.
I think Shadow, like, that's probably good enough to get the fire suppression system off for now. Um, but it's going to take you, while you're in drift, while you're in space, you're probably going to have to take your time with this to get the fire suppression system at least mechanically aligned. Shadow, you're able to work around the programming for the time being, and uh, like while you're in space, is there any kind of like conversation you guys need to have? Is there any like scenes you need to have? You just kind of got Tiz. Big Al is kind of in his room, doing who knows what
Screaming in
at the moment.
voices.
Possibly.
The voices
You
won't stop.
never know. The But like Shadow, you have a whole new person on your crew that you didn't have, that you only recently gained. Is there a conversation that needs to be had there, or are you just gonna?
Probably.
Oh,
Tis, can I talk to you?
What do you require of us?
I just want to get to know all of you. And you said you were looking to explore. Why is that?
It is a vast universe. There are many of us that is not us. Other hive minds. We wish to find one similar to us.
find more of your kind.
Question for Tiz: do like your insects like reproduce and die off and stuff? So like, do you shed insects like we did? Like we shed skin and fur
Is it
Oh,
in character or out of character?
out of character.
Out of character, I imagine that when the individual insects die, they are consumed,
Ah,
and I mean it's a constant cycle of
that would make
life and
sense.
death inside the colony.
that makes sense. Many insects are cannibalistic, so uh, well, they eat their own kind, or others like them. So yeah, that makes sense. Um,
So you want to not be alone?
We are not alone.
No, I mean you're looking for another hive mind. When you find them, do you intend to join them, work with them as separate entities? What are you looking for?
Merge together, become a large creature.
We we wish to we wish to examine their constituent.
Okay,
I have
so
not come across any that are of you would call us the type of insect we are comprised.
I see. Well, it might be a good thing you haven't found one just like you. It keeps you unique. Every person, human, Lashunta, Patra, we're each a unique person. And you don't want to lose that uniqueness. Otherwise, you just become one of many. And I know you are one of many when you count all your components.
We are
But
not
that
one of
many
many.
is,
We are many into one.
yeah, it's like
Snap, snap, snap.
I love the idea that Shadow has a hard time wrapping his head around what it's like to be a Spothane. That's awesome. Mm, yeah,
you don't want to lose your unique status because it makes you special and useful, and Well, I don't want to have to get to know a new you. Do you understand?
No,
No, I love it. Um,
everything is unique. Everything is useful. Everything is special.
That is the way it is for most things. But there are some things where their uniqueness was taken away from them. Have you ever heard of the swarm?
Looks at self. Duh.
Yes, we are not the swarm, if that is your concern.
Oh no, that is not my concern. I was just making sure you knew that the swarm is something totally different than the hive mind that you are. Finding one of them would be very bad.
It would be a learning experience.
I like him.
Yes, but it might be an experience in learning how to die. So I don't want to run into them prematurely, you know?
If that is our path, then so be it.
Ah, you believe there is a path that must be followed that you don't know where it goes. You are a destiny person.
No being knows their path.
Some beings make their path.
That's right.
Remind me sometime later to tell you how I got off of my home planet. Actually, I'll look up the story file. I did that a few years ago, so I think I should be able to find it pretty quickly. But for now, I just enjoy yourself, enjoy your plants. Talk to Oliver and find out if there are any specific plants he's going to need. You two could probably work well together.
Remember to like and subscribe.
uh,
We are happy to be of assistance.
Thank you. And that's about it for talking to Tist. I think I think our Shadow has a bit of a.
yeah, all right. So, right on.
You know, I can't find. I was trying to see if there is some specific item for growing plants, but I don't.
There is for doing something large scale,
Oh,
like
large
you know,
scale.
they have hydroponic. For doing something like that, basically, I'm allowing the plant thing as a narrative thing because it makes sense for the character
Right.
and whatnot. But if you guys are trying to do something mechanical with it, you're gonna need like the
Oh,
hydroponics bay, which you have to have a bigger ship for.
yeah, and habitat boxes too for just like if I want to keep a small
Right.
plant alive to study. Okay.
Yeah. So you know
Yeah.
there are things you can buy and pick up to do. Um, but yeah, Tiz, do you go make it a point to go see Oliver at some point, or do you just kind of like do your thing?
At this point, I've got a goal in mind. One is this fire suppression system.
Yeah.
Yep.
It has
Yeah.
sprayed
Still
many
got
of
that
his
still to
bugs.
build up, and then just that'll be basically occupying my time. That and maintaining and growing the plants that I do have from that.
All right.
There's like some scraping at some point as I drag my bed into the science bay.
You just like screw my room. I'm just gonna sleep in the science bay.
For now, I'm working on so many serums, like it's just constant going. It's like I'm gonna have to sleep in here in case an alarm goes off. Would not want to blow up
Okay.
the entire science bay.
Right on. So maybe we get a montage of of Oliver being in the science lab, making using his custom micro lab to um, work with the greater science bay to create serums, and Tiz working on the fire suppression system in the still, and Shadow making vlogs and Chess. I don't know what is Chess doing with her time during, like, what is she doing with her time when she's not actively checking the course and whatnot.
Sleeping and flying. I don't know. Cleaning her
Mhm.
gun, maybe.
All right. Yeah. So maybe, like, you know is Chess just sort of maintaining some signification of readiness. Did you guys make it to Kabarat? It's a very large city, and it's very, very high tech, you know, city. You see like sky cars for and hover cycles, and hover trucks moving everywhere. You see the port city. You see ships flying in and flying out of the docks and what have you. Find it on the map here real quick. There it is. And you see, ships, coming into docks on the sea, off of the sea and what have you, with the large industrial, you know, with like the big, large industrial cranes that move like the huge, shipping containers, on and off of ships. And it's pretty busy. It's a very busy city and what have you. And it's predominantly Shanta, but you see a few elves and humans and Shirens and Isekai and half elves and stuff moving around and what have you. Um, Chess, you know about your home world. Anybody else may want to make a culture check to see if they what they know about the place. Unless Chess is going to give any, unless Chess is volunteering information. There you go. Well, Shadow knows a few things. Oliver knows a handful of things.
I probably know a lot more about their physical bodies. I don't know about
Yeah,
culture as much, but I know how to dissect one.
yeah. Your training included the most of the
Sorry,
Pact World
autopsy.
races. Yeah, you did manage it. Like you're very like studying your charts. You're like, oh yeah, the Lashuntas. I remember that. I remember that course. Lashunta medicine. Da da da. Um, Oliver, kind of what you know culturally about Castrovel is that there are three races that live here. There's the Lashuntas, who, they're like, it's sort of like their government acts as sort of the representatives on the Pact Worlds Council more than anything. And then there's the elves in Soivarian, and no, Saveri Savirian. I was reading it wrong. In Savirian, which is, and they're pretty insular. Not a lot of people go in and not a lot of non-elves go in and out. You don't know a lot about it. And then there's the Formians that are these insect-like people that the Lashunta were warring with for a very long time. Um, Shadow, you've done a bit more research on this, and for you, not only do you know all of that, you also know that um, there's still, some frayed feelings when it comes to the Formians and the Lashunta. Lashunta have a tendency to have a bit of mistrust for insectoid beings in, you know, uh, the. I just saw your bit there in the chat. That's great. Um, but you know that there's still sore feelings between the Formians and the Lashuntas, and Lashuntas tend to mistrust, insectoid races, by and large. The elven people of Savirian, uh, basically, if you are born with elf blood, you can claim citizenship in Savirian, because the elves are sort of a declining power in the Pact world. So they don't really have a world of their own, and because they tend to be insular and mistrustful of other races and what have you, there it limits how much trade and influence they have with everybody else. Not that there aren't there aren't expats that leave, and not that there aren't some elves even that live in Severian that are more open-minded. But by and large, elven culture here is sort of closed off to a great deal. But the big thing about the biggest thing to remember is Castrovel is a very they have a very capitalistic society in the sense that there are a lot of rumors of corruption, and corporate influence in the highest levels of government. There are a lot of people who fear that the that that Asana and by extension, Castrovel are not that far away from some sort of corporatocracy because the Marina Kesh, the current leader of the Asanan government, does a lot of work trying to limit the influence and trying to keep it from turning into that. But the amount of money that goes through in some of these mega corporations that that have bases of operations there make it kind of difficult. So the corporations have a great deal of sway here, um, and you would notice that. Uh, Scott, are you still with us?
Yeah, okay. I was
Okay.
like, he's been holding so still this whole time. I was like, did he
Yeah.
pass out?
Yeah. Well, as soon as I saw as soon as I saw your thing in chat, I was like, wow, he does cut. His head is kind of
I didn't
weird
want to like
position.
interrupt, but
You fall asleep on us, and but yeah, you're kind of coming into Kabarat, and Shadow, the corporations are both a good and an ill for you guys' cause because they tend to have lots of money and have things that they want done and are willing to hire people like you for, but they're also corporations. So, there's that. Um, you know, but all in all, there's the potential to try to find some work here.
I let the team know what I know about the place. So it might be best if Tizit would not come around if I'm asking for jobs from La Junta. However, it might be helpful with the Formians.
This is acceptable.
I forget that some people seem to have different views on others like that. Everything's a body to me.
It's funny that you forget people look at strange races weird because as a bear you get looked at funny all the time.
It's because everyone else just looks like
Eh,
something I can dissect. Except Tiz,
yeah,
but that's a whole different story.
yeah. Um, but yeah, you're able to get yourself landed. Customs, of course, is a you deal with customs and what have you. They want to check your cargo and your manifest and everything like that. Make certain you guys are on the level and what have you. But this city looks a lot like it just is the kind of place that doesn't really sleep. There's a lot of activity going on here, and there's a great deal of stuff going on all over the place. You are you are in Kabarat, and you have the opportunity to go check place out. There's plenty of places to go shopping. They do have they do have some gun control laws currently because there are a lot of protests going on in a lot of different places at this point. Like Marina Cash and her government they're not really all that eager to have angry people in the streets with lots of weapons. You can buy them, but there's laws against carrying within city limits. There's laws against concealed carry kind of stuff. So basically, you're allowed to have them. It's understood that some people go out do mercenary work and things like that. Um, but it's one and criminals see it as it's just one more charge I'm going to get for the shit that I'm already doing. But the rest of the population is kind of a little bit different.
But open carry's okay.
No, carrying is not okay, and certainly
Gotcha.
not, and certainly no grenades. Like you walk into town with grenades, and they're gonna be like,
How about robotic spiders?
Oh, I love the
that they're
reference.
that they're okay, but they're not that they're okay with, but they want you to make sure that you take the weapons off of him before he comes in. And it's like before he disembarks. Like the customs official is explaining this. She's like, "I'm afraid at this time that we are not allowing weapons to be carried in city limits. You're welcome to bring your drone, but you must detach the weapons off of them." You can still attempt to carry if you're going to try to sleight of hand to try to hide a small weapon on yourself,
Just like shove it in my fur somewhere. I won't even notice.
Even a small knife, I mean, it's barely useful for anything other than um, picking underneath my nails. He shows her the knife.
yeah, the
Oh, and he'll try a little schmoozing with that. So that's diplomacy.
okay. Now, what do you? Uh, so she's like, it's a little long, but she's like, look, just keep it out of sight and keep it out of sight and don't start any trouble. And she's like, don't. She's like, but no guns and no grenades. Um, you know,
No, no, of course not.
and she like mentions a couple of districts that you probably shouldn't go to right now. She's like, there's a lot of unrest in in these districts, and pulls up like a little hollow map. You may not want to go there. It's not exactly safe. And she's like, and she kind of is doing the thing, and she's like, she's like, however, however, if you're looking for a tour guide or a guide of things to, a city guide of things to, entertainment and shopping opportunities, she's like, here are two or three websites that you might, here are two or three info sites, sphere sites that you might check out. Give you a great deal of information on where to find various stores and good places to eat and entertainment if you're interested in the nightlife. She's, um, but she's like uh, and I think she's pretty much, you guys aren't currently carrying anything illegal. Maybe the Voost inhalers, but she doesn't have the skills to like analyze what those inhalers are used for.
Yeah.
So
I have a lot of other medicinal stuff on me.
yeah, she's kind of relatively suspicious. She does look at you, Tiz, very weird, very. She does look at you strange, and she looks at you, Oliver, as kind of strange.
I wave at her.
Yeah, uh, uh, she kind of
I
Shadow
probably.
is like, what is it? What is like your what do your credentials look like on your crew manifest? Did you like list yourself as a captain? Or
Yes, he did.
okay, she probably looks at it and she goes, And which one of you is Captain Shadow?
That would be me.
She goes, excellent. She's like, and if you are looking to do any large scale trading or take anything off of the planet, I would warn you that that you will have to pass anything that you're intending to take off through customs. There will be an inspection before you leave, just to make sure that we've had issues with people stealing cultural artifacts, and
Throwing grenades at ferns. What?
no, that's on Vercease.
Of
They
Oh.
course,
have
of
that issue.
course. I am a Pater. I am from the Vescarium. I understand how needed tradition is.
So she's a Lashunta, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I totally telepathically communicate with her as she's like determining who that he's Captain Shadow, and in her head she just hears, "We just let him think he's Captain," and I wink at her like as much as a bear can wink.
She just kind of looks at you like, okay. I mean, Lashuntas are telepathic
Yeah,
too, and so
there.
it's Sheeran are, so it's telepathic races are not uncommon, but
Yep.
um, just like realizing that it's coming from the bear is a little disconcerting. Like, okay, and she's like, and she's like, make certain that your crew stays out of trouble while you're here. And and there's that moment where it's like you can tell she's trying not to be offensive per se, but at the same time she's also kind of well aware that there are some creatures on your crew that might be uh, that might be trouble just by walking down the street.
I knew
Um,
you were trouble when you walked
So,
in.
so she can read minds, right?
No, no, no.
she can telepathically communicate, but
Yeah.
outright reading minds is a completely different thing. That's reading somebody's mind with it is like an actual spell or something. Limited telepathy just allows telepathic communication. So you'd have to want to communicate. She's not gonna just like she can't just read your mind. Well, I mean, I don't think she's a technomancer or mystic with that spell. So yeah, she's probably like an envoy, possibly an operative, but
Oh crap! You hear that, computer? She might have a name, meaning we can't just one-shot her.
Wrong game.
I want to use my
but
collateral
yeah,
damage. Yeah, I bear march my way past her.
bear march. I love that. Just fucking,
Have you ever
that's
seen a
great.
bear walk? Like their front shoulder is just like boom, boom. Like those things move, and there's a lot to them.
Right. Well, bears are very big creatures, so yeah, when they move, it's very obvious, as you have found out many times. The Yeah. So, what's your first order of business here in Cabaret? Are you gonna kind of go looking for jobs, go shopping? Are you gonna try to take in some entertainment here?
I'm gonna go get a drink.
You go find yourself a bar. Okay. Um, do you check the? Well, you've probably been to Cabaret before. Like you're from Castrovel. Hell, you might even be from Cabaret itself. That's a question I don't know the answer to.
I would figure I'd know right where to go. Like, even if I'm not specifically from this town, I would know about it, and I would
Hmm.
know, hey, this is a good bar to go to just to get one drink.
Okay,
Wonderful.
yeah, sure. Yeah, there's a bar. It's a little bit there's a bar that you know of that maybe Artris had talked about before, um, called the Discarded Mask, and it's run by a half elf. And it's kind of niche. Not it's one of those places that's very um, it's one of those places that it's like people who know. no kind of place. It's a cool kids kind of trendy place. So, but you can get a decent beer there. You can get some good stuff. There's you walk in and let's see, let's give this guy a name here.
Ah, darn it. I I probably walk in. I'm just like, I need the strongest thing you have.
I think the name of the owner is a half elf named Sevik, and Sevik kind of he's there, and like there's somebody else behind the bar, but he's obviously there manage sort of like um, kind of making sure that like that everything is running smoothly, managing the place and whatnot. So you're gonna go with Chess
Oh
and
yes.
go to the discarded mask.
So will Shadow.
All right,
All right, let's get a mission. But first, we drink.
all right, all right. So you go into the place, and there is a very clear the decor here is sort of like a is postmodern elf decor, but it's um, but it's also like controversial in the way that like it takes like elven styles of painting like and decor and it twists them in a weird way.
Ooh.
So instead of like you might expect to see like uh, designs that are very organic feeling like from start to finish for elven artwork that but this is like there's paintings of like trees made of glass and with leaves made of rubber and you know there's maybe like the the relief of a sculpture of like the a half elven face with a half elven head that is marred on one side somehow. So it's kind of that, hey, elves love to present things in this very idealistic way, but this is sort of that idealistic way twisted, so it's less idyllic. So, um,
Kind of counterculture art.
oh yeah, very much so. But and the lighting here tends to be very organic feeling to a large extent, but there is also like an element of clashing with that like there's like some of the colors that on the walls and stuff feel like they would pop more under something more modern, something more like neon or what have you. um, but they blend in a very weird way. uh, but yeah, you kind of manage to make your way in. And it's the kind of place where like yeah they serve like beer but they also serve like coffee and they have like it's one of those kind of places that has like on the walls there's like shelves of like books and games that are obviously there for customer use and also to some extent decoration as well. You know and the elf at the bar that's the elf that's tending the bar probably kind of walks over when you guys walk in because it's about mid-afternoon. It's like hey, what can I hello, welcome to the discarded mask. What can I do for you discerning individuals today? And the pause seems like it's less about like I don't know, less about like, oh God, and more about what is the most polite way to address these people. You know, which is very different from most elves. And, um, or at least the elves you've run into.
Yeah, I would like. I'd be like, hmm. I would like the strongest thing you have.
Ah, indeed. And it's like, looks over at you, Chess, and like, and for you,
Mild wine.
and looks over at Shadow. He's like,
I'll
and you,
have a simple ale.
oh, okay, and looks over at Tiz for a minute and says, and anything for you, uh, anything for you?
A bowl of meat juice.
Meat juice. She's like, she's like, see what I can do. Will this be all on one tab or separate?
One.
And she was, all right. She was, and kind of makes she makes conversation like while she's working, because you're like effectively you're not the only customer she has, but she doesn't have a lot of customers at the moment. She's like, um, she's kind of just making idle conversation about like, like books and stuff. Maybe just like, oh, have you read the latest from, have you read the latest from Professor uh, Talandron? His treatise on the deep cultures in the sun. Very interesting, very intriguing work.
Oh, it popped up on my list, but I have not gotten to it yet.
Oh, I highly recommend it. She's like, and she talks about like, and she talks about like, oh, and there's a doctor, blah blah blah. She talks about some, some uh, scholar that is doing that has just published a book that has just published a paper about like the Lashunta and Elven wars. That's super controversial because he's like, yeah, the elves should have been able to wipe out the Formians if they had done this, this, and this, and there's some pushback on that because that's, hey, we're at peace. That's kind of a fucked up thing to do. But he's actually a contemplative, so different perspective. um,
One would
you know, but
suppose.
but she kind of makes mention of it. She's of that. Uh, you know, this is obviously a different kind of bar because she's not talking about sports and she's not talking about like the latest, gladiatorial games or anything like that. She's talking about things that are, current technological and scholarly sort of endeavors and what have you.
Yeah. I counter back with more life science endeavors.
Oh yeah, yeah. She'll probably keep up with that bit of conversation. She's for a bartender surprisingly well read.
Yeah.
Uh,
Surprising me, like, oh, well, have you heard of this?
yeah, exactly. But yeah, she manages to get you all drinks and whatnot. Uh, she kind of shrugs her shoulder. Like when she comes back, she's like, or gets like, kind of presents your drinks and it's just like. This is this right here. This wine is Hiren wine. It's it's a very rare wine. It's a human wine. to the more of the elven, to most of the elven quality, but it's rare enough, and I've just gotten a bottle in that I think it would suit your strongest thing I've got. For the for your mid-priced wine, there is a sh- sh- sorry, there is a Rolitrian wine. It's made with some rare pollens from the jungles. There's well, they're not so rare apparently, but uh, it's starting to catch on. And for you, sir, a a skybox ale.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
She's like, and that'll be 30 credits. And she looks at you, Tiz, and she goes, I don't have meat juice. Is there something else I can get you?
3 glasses of sugar water.
She
Sugar
nods. She's like,
water.
I can do that.
I swear to God, if you're a
Yeah.
cockroach inside a human body,
No, you're but yeah, there's like and maybe there's a there's like some show that's like doing an interview with like a some sort of hmm, like a light jazz musician, like some sort of Castrovillian light jazz. Chess, you may or may not be familiar with it. I don't know if Chess listens to jazz or if Chess listens to. For all I know, Chess listens to dance pop. We've never discussed
cat,
that.
get out from underfoot.
She's kind of. She doesn't hate any type of music, but she likes all music. All of them have a general reason to exist.
Yeah, yeah. There's probably like some and this light jazz musician is probably talking about like conservation, which is kind of a big topic on Castrovel, with the very large jungles that exist here. Um, yeah, you all have your drinks. There's this sort of thing going on in the background with this sort of like very uh, very sort of like trendy bar that you're at, what have you. They're yeah, you've got your drinks in hand. What's the topic of conversation?
So, Chess, you're from around here?
You guys did my flight training a couple towns over.
Ah, no
Do
wonder.
you have a good idea of where we would be able to look for work?
I think this is going to require a culture check here. Well, there's a lot of places that do. There's a lot of businesses that may have various kinds of work for you, and whatnot. But you have heard of a couple of different places that a couple of different things that are going on. There is the what is it? God damn it! There is the Valiant the Valiant the Valiant Horizons uh, is a uh, is a company that deals with researching new pharmacological like answers to basically they're a drug company. There's also a the University of Kabarat, which they sometimes hire for forays that go out into the jungles, looking for cultural artifacts, looking for historical information. Um, there there's a number of there's a number of different companies around here that would pay you to spy on get information on other companies and whatnot. But as far as you know, there's not you can't think of you haven't been on world for a while, so you're not familiar with what exactly is out there right at the moment. But there are a few different, like in the corporate sector that would likely have some work for you. Last you knew that, we'll see. I'm gonna write this down here so I remember. But yeah, there's the let's see. All right.
All right. So what I would say is, well, last time I was here, you know, there's always the Valiant thing. They're always looking for people to do random things. Never hurts to go to a university. You know, they might want something.
Oh yes, I can teach students. There's a little
No,
drunken
they usually
sarcasm.
do like search for artifact type things, dude. It's weird.
Yeah,
Even
they
better.
send expeditions. Yeah, they send expeditions out into the jungle fairly
Yeah,
regularly.
Oliver just doesn't know that.
That would mean new kinds of creatures to find, Oliver.
Oh, I suppose. He's a little tipsy.
A
He's got
little
a massive body, so it takes a lot. That's why he has to order the
yeah,
strongest.
yeah, it is pretty good.
And it's more of a he has to just wrap his mouth around the glass and tilt it up. Bear mouths are weird.
I mean, the Valiant dude, they work with drugs and stuff, so
That could
you
be
seem to be
interesting.
interested in drugs.
Either one actually would be okay by me.
I mean, legal drugs, not the illegal ones.
Those are fine as well.
Those are fine as well. Now here's a question: do you have any contacts with either of these places? Let's see. So give me a culture check to see if you have contacts here.
Who are you talking to?
Chess,
Oh,
since I mean any of you can make fucking rolls to see if you have any contacts here. Oliver, either of those places, realistically, you trained in medical arts, then you could potentially know somebody.
would I make a profession roll or a culture check?
It'd be a culture check.
Okay,
Um,
I tried.
wait a minute. Do you have ranks in culture?
I have 3 ranks in, or no, I have no ranks in culture. 3 ranks in biotechnician
Okay,
profession.
so culture is one of those you can't roll unless you have ranks in it.
Well, yeah, so I only
Which
got profession.
I guess technically, Chess doesn't either. uh, so scratch that culture roll unless you have actual ranks in culture, in which case you can roll a culture roll to see if you have any connections here.
So just
Nobody?
shadow. Just shadow. It looks like.
Okay. So Shadow, you actually do know somebody here. Um, I think you probably know a Professor Belaston from the Kabarat University. You ran into him uh, a few years back. We can define what did that like. How do you know Professor Belaston? Like, where did you meet this university professor? Let's fill that in, shall we?
Okay, he was probably one of the first people he met after he got off of his home planet because, well, there's a whole story about that. Sorry. Uh, they probably sent him in to the ship that Shadow was on because nobody had come out in a while, and they were wondering if there was a problem or something that needed to be um, exterminated. And what he found was a bunch of very scared young Patra who'd paid someone off to get them off the planet and who tried to basically kill them with gravity.
Yeah, okay. So maybe Professor Belaston used to work in the Port Authority, and before he became, while he was working on his degree, and that's where you met him. Oh. And I don't know if you've kept, I assume you've had at least some correspondence to know that he's a professor with the university now. Um,
Yeah, probably.
yeah, you could potentially give him a call.
I think I know someone I can get in contact with that might be helpful.
Well,
All right.
let's see what we can get from that then, shall we?
All right, so he'll call him up.
Boop boop boop.
All right. So, Professor Belaston is actually he's actually a human, which is they're humans are everywhere. They don't have their own planet, so they tend to be wherever they kind of end up. But oh, you get Professor Belaston. Maybe he's at this point he's a bit grayer than you remember him as being. You know, and he has a very refined look to him. He's dressed relatively nice and answers the vid call. At first he's like, I'm hey, Shadow. That's nice to see
Hello,
you.
Professor. How have you been?
Well, I've been fairly well of late. Says you look well. What what bring you? He says you wasn't hadn't heard from you in a while. Are you? I take it you're on planet.
Yes, yes. I spent some time hopping around from place to place, and now I'm back here. And well, I wanted to see if we could talk.
I'd love to talk. This is I've got a few. I've got a class in about an hour. There's some advanced life sciences, and the within the cultural relevance thereof. Says, but I'd love to meet for tea later. Uh, he says I'll send you the address to my new place. He says we'll meet there. We'll have he says and he says and he's like I'll include the time. Uh, he and he's like, it'll be good to catch up. Things have been I don't know. I'm doing well, but it's been a little busy of late.
Well, busy is better than stagnant. And that class of yours, does it accept walk-in observers? I think I have a friend who would be interested. He looks at Oliver.
Does it
Uh,
accept bears?
I mean, I'm afraid you have to be enrolled for it, enrolled. But I would, if you have a friend that has an interest in the sciences, I'd be more than happy to discuss topic with him. Uh, if you care to bring him for tea.
Oh, yes, yes. I
This
think he
human's
would
in for
enjoy
a
it very much.
Oh, sorry. This human's in for a surprise. In walks Shadow. Hey, Shadow, where's your friend? In walks a bear.
Right, fucking okay. That's new. Yeah. He's like, I look forward to it. And he kind of sets and he's like, I'll see you then.
All right, I'll see you.
Yeah, he kind of hangs up. What have you? You've got and you guys have you guys have a few hours before you need to be there. So um, yeah, you got time to kick around and do stuff. There's a like the
Round two.
round two. Okay, yeah. She brings out like yeah, she brings another. Is everybody getting? She comes over. She's like, for everyone.
Uh,
Yes,
I,
yes, for me.
I'm probably looking up like known species of Castrovel to see
Right.
what hasn't been fully uh, researched yet.
All right. Hmm.
So I've probably
Give
I've
me
oh oh computers.
yeah.
Oh, I do have computers. Good. Hold on. Nice.
Excellent. Yeah. The biodiversity on Castrovel is just ridiculous. Like any place where there's jungles.
Right.
Um, there you're reading up on like all kinds of different creatures and whatnot. And there's a you know there's a lot of uh, there's a guy. There's like you find several specials by somebody named Avid Dattenborough. He's got a really soothing voice, and he talks
Damn it.
about.
I was trying to remember
he,
why that sounded so familiar, and then you were like soothing voice. I was like, oh.
yeah, but he talks. He's talking talks quite a bit about various different like life forms and whatnot. Um,
Let's not forget about Formy and Freeman.
yeah, God.
Formy and Freeman? Wow.
Um, but yeah, he's there's you're currently watching like a thing about like various types of like insects and mollusks that live like in very specific parts of like Asana and what have you. Uh, so you're checking out like stuff on the life sciences, on like the animals and stuff that you can find on planet. Um, and everybody gets another round. So you're getting another round. So another 30 credits. Uh, there's like yeah, and the barkeep is like kind of is it just kind of like keeps it coming and you know but makes pleasant conversation when setting up the drinks and what have you. It's just like maybe like sees what you're watching. It's like, oh, I've watched that one. That's a really good one. It's like they talk about. It's like they talk about these different funguses. And they says there's a says there's a fungus that takes over physical control of species. and then grows out of them. You're just
Now,
like,
is this something that I hear?
uh, yeah. I mean, you're sitting at the same table.
Change the channel.
Yeah. You should,
I switch it to ear communicator only, so he doesn't have to hear it. Little sensitive bug.
uh,
They don't have to hear it. I was looking up creatures from Casterfell just now, and there's one called the Racania, or Bracania. It's a predatory plant that stands almost 12 feet tall and weighs 2,000 pounds, and emits a sweet odor to a radius of 15 feet. Yikes.
yeah. And Castrovillian wildlife ain't nothing to fuck
There's
with.
also laser
That's something to
wolves.
say.
There's straight up laser wolves.
Yeah.
Tash Terrace. What?
Yep.
Although I was looking
Yep.
at one, I totally want to get a squawks as a pet. Just saying. Having a bear with a little fox squirrel on his back would be the best.
Awesome. Yeah. So you guys just gonna kind of sit around drinking until you get to the time to meet the professor, or are you going to you have any other business?
Well,
No.
Show's going to stop at 2 drinks.
All right.
He wants to be conscious.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, because you have a couple hours, like a couple hours of drinking, you show up for tea, like, woo, all right.
We're so wasted. Oh god, a drunk bear walks into a room, everything just collapses.
Oh God, and very quickly. Um, yeah, you manage to get your way to the like you find it comes time for the meeting. You find your way out to, and he kind of lives in sort of what amounts to suburbs of the sort of suburbs, and it's a very nice house. And when I say very nice, I mean the kind of thing somebody who is well-to-do would live in. You know, and he's kind of that. There's the lawn is well kept. There's it's a very like nice looking place with lots of greenery growing around and lots of very clean uh, very clean like building. It looks like it's in really good repair, um and what have you. So they're kind of doing that there, but you make your way there, and like he answers the door, and uh Professor Belaston, he's a human, probably in about his early 50s. So his gray hair is mostly gray, um, and he's he keeps himself well kempt, so his hair is very professionally styled. He doesn't have he keeps himself clean shaven. He wears glasses, and he's like, Shadow, come in. He's like, and do you take everyone with you, or just you and
Yeah,
Oliver, or
I'll take
do you take?
everyone.
Yeah. So he kind of like, when he looks around, he goes, ah. He goes, you have a interesting friends, and he stops around, and he for a minute like he goes to shake your hand, uh and then Chess's. When he comes to Oliver, he kind of goes,
That is my friend. He's the medical technician. He's the one that's going to be interested in whatever you were doing in your last class.
he goes, hmm, I've heard that there were some bears that had been uplifted with intelligence. I didn't think I'd ever meet one. He goes, this is very interesting. And you're a student of the sciences and learning, or then very intriguing. Very intriguing indeed.
Oh, I was muted. Wow. Check the chart,
Yeah.
Daniel. Yeah, he reaches out a paw and he's like, yes, well, hopefully moving on a little beyond student, but There's always more to learn.
And he goes, ah, the day that even when we're teachers, even when we're professors, even when we're the headmasters of entire universities, we're always still students. All of us are all still students of knowledge, though some choose not to admit it as much. But he says, I look forward to hearing your thoughts. And he comes to you, Tiz, and he goes, this is a true rarity. I had heard there are a number of my colleagues who believe that your kind are nothing but a myth. Very interesting. He's like, I have a number of questions for you. Hmm.
We are keen to answer any inquiries.
He's like, he says, come in, come in, come in. Well, he says, I've got, he says, I will have, he says, come, he says, follow me. And he's like, I bought this place last year. I got my tenure. Nice little, uh, nice little bonus check. This is, and he says, there were a few of my colleagues that were less than pleased to see my tenure go through at such a well. Let's just say that the elves feel I'm a bit too young to have earned tenure. And he chuckles at that.
Oliver lets out a bear laugh, and he's like, to earn tenure this early, it's quite an achievement.
He kind of he he says, well, he says, for an elf, it's a bigger achievement. For us humans, we're a little bit farther along our life cycle than an elf is at 52. He is, and he says, and he kind of is filling you in. He goes, lately, I haven't been able to get out to the field as much. Busy busy with my responsibilities around the university. Although I did get a good research grant, but unfortunately, it's been getting harder and harder to get out in the field. Lots of, unfortunately, there are a great deal of the typical individuals I might have hired to provide security on such exploration have been, well, a lot of them have been going out to the colonies, joining the war, joining the fight against the Aslanti, joining the fight for against the Hell Knights. I just I understand a few of them have even gone to the Marixa Republic to well, to help defend against the Gerderon Authority.
Then it's fortunate that I showed up with my friends. We are basically troubleshooters. We hire ourselves out to assist in all sorts of jobs, including, I guess, escort missions.
He goes, very good. He says, he says, well, then I suppose we may as well. And he kind of he says, he gets like, he's like, this is my study. He goes, it's a, he says, I'm still having some of the, I'm still having a few tomes delivered, recent publications mostly. Though there are a couple of interesting ones that are from farther back that I intend to study. Just, I will make yourselves comfortable. I will be back very shortly with the tea. And he kind of like takes off to go get the tea, leaving you guys to find ways to make yourselves comfortable in the study.
I go on.
So, what does everyone think? I think it would be nice if we worked for him for a while.
Oh yes.
I mean, it gives Oliver a chance to look at all sorts of new creatures. It gives us a chance to go out and learn more about the universe by studying a planet full of so much life. And Chess gets to land us in places.
And he says, it it's it's not long before he comes back with some tea. With um, he comes back. He's got a tray with like an old school like kettle on it. However, it's a really fancy one. It's like engraved and very shiny. And he kind of like he walks over to a cupboard, or like a not a cupboard but like trying to think of what they're called. I guess
China hutch.
yeah, a hutch.
Credenza.
Yeah, exactly, like a hutch. And he pulls out some teacups, and he kind of starts setting them around. And intern pours everybody a cup of tea, and he's like, he's like, I hope everyone here likes tea. I'm afraid I don't know much about your species. He says, looking at Tiz, and he's like, first of all, I may say, he says, first of all, this is I have a grant to go out and do a little bit of research. Uh, un- Unfortunately, the site that I'm going to, well, there's already researchers out there, but it hasn't been there's been no word from it in quite some time. I'm a little concerned about security going out there. Being that we haven't had a report, no solid report in a while, need to pick up some information from there and use it as a stop off point to go looking through, to go to a dig site. There's a cultural. I understand there's some interesting cultural artifacts there that well, I'm looking to add to you know, I'm looking into to add to a few theories of mine of ancient elven culture that existed on this world quite a long time ago. It may lead us, it may lead us to discovery of some of those mountain heart cities that we've heard so much about. There's supposed to be several of them, but only one or two of them are even known. Uh, are known, and these artifacts may point us in the right direction. At least that's what the initial reports are said, but the understudy that's out there wasn't certain, needed a second opinion. I felt an expedition was in order, but my usual people were, well, they're not out. Says I've got a, I could offer a good, I could offer a good 10,000 credits if you and your crew are willing to provide security and support on such an expedition.
I would be glad to look into
Well,
the
that
rest.
sounds wonderful. What does everyone else think? He looks at Tz, who's the
Yes.
only person who hasn't said
What
anything.
do you all think? Looking to.
Uh, it is an excellent chance to examine plants and do research. We are in agreement.
He kind of he's like, ah, well, with business out of the way, I suppose probably the thing to do here is to, he says, perhaps we can conversate a little bit about, well, catching up. And I have a few questions for you about now, as far as food sources, what do your people what do your kind ingest?
My particular species of insect, we are omnivores.
Ah, omnivorous, and he kind of like pulls out a data pad and he's kind of like puts enter some information and he's like and he's kind of like and waste byproducts. What exactly the the and not to be too blue about it, and he says, but what how do you excrete, and if you excrete, what do you excrete, and and how?
How do you poop?
Yeah, these are quite
Everybody poops.
yeah,
These are important questions.
they are for him anyway. Like he subjects you to a battery of questions about like what it is like to be a Spothane. And he's like, do you consider yourselves an individual or do you consider yourselves a group?
We are both. As far as excretion, we store product in our body, in our colony, and expel it at an opportune moment. I have I've created a still to ferment
Oh,
the byproduct. It is my
Ah,
understanding that many humanoids enjoy fermented byproduct.
feces wine.
he just, he's like, interesting. And he like yeah, and he's like, so you are one and many at the same time. This is fascinating. And Oliver, are you taking notes here
Or,
too at this
yeah,
point?
100%. Oliver's been sitting there with his data pad out, like, like he's probably gotten some scans off of, but I
If
don't
you
know.
wish to see us, I can, or we can have an individual uh, display themselves.
Ooh, that would be fantastic.
I would be very fascinated with such a thing.
Shadow takes a mental note: never drink anything offered by petite.
Well, you don't want some feces wine? It's very popular in certain places, like Korea.
Yeah, it's, but I think like he says, before I get too distracted on such on the fascination, the fascinating. He says, but yeah, he's like I would like to catch up on some of your adventures here, and like I think for the most part he's willing to make small talk and conversate about like scientific issues and what have you for as long as you guys are willing to for the most part. But he will at some point set up like I believe he's like and I believe that I should be ready to leave, have my stuff together by this. But he says by mid afternoon tomorrow. I also have he says I have one class in the morning I have to take care of. Says and but he's offering 10,000 credits. I'm trying to think what else would he have. What else does he have to say? But yeah, he sets up, arranges the time for you guys to meet up, a time and a place to meet up for the to go on this thing. He explains the first leg of the journey. We will be going. we will be going to a. We will be going. Blah blah blah. Blah. Damn it! It flipped off my notes. My there it is. We will be headed to the continent of Eucolum. Going to the northern to where is it? To Station 9 is our first point, but once we fly there, it'll be all on foot. The Eucolum is a protected sanctuary for the most part. They don't like by agreement of the Formian and the Asan and government and the Salvarian government, we have all agreed that unnecessary vehicular transportation on the continent is going to be is against the law. We'd like to the preserve the natural wildlife as possible as much as possible. From Station 9, we'll be heading north towards the Singing Range.
May we take samples of plant life during this trip?
And wildlife.
Small samples, non-invasive. I'm afraid wildlife will have to settle for we'll have to settle for observation of behaviors. You will be allowed to bring recording equipment to record some of the animals, as long as you can as long as they're non-invasive and unobtrusive. We've been studying much of the wildlife like this in this manner for years.
Now, what about natural death corpses? A partially eaten corpse found on the side of the road. Am I allowed to study that?
Study, yes, but removing,
Ah,
no, as it would potentially. There are scavenger species. We don't want to take away from there. We don't want to upset the balance there.
I suppose. Gotta up my
However,
stealth rolls here.
Snacks are not provided on this flight.
I'm a bear. To me, you all are a snack. Except maybe Shadow. He's like a fellow predator, you know. I give him some respect.
You are the same to us.
Yeah, I guess so. You're not really a snack. We're your snack if you're mosquitoes. You know, you could have been a swarm of murder hornets. Hornets. That would have been so much better.
So, so when when I offer to produce an example of the main species within the body, there's actually several different species in cohabitation, but the main one is going to be a tendril wasp, and
Yes.
it's about an inch and a half long to 2 inches. Think of a yellow jacket, except legs are more like a like tarantula legs. The jaws, the mandibles are easily visible. They're about a quarter inch to a half inch long, and the adults have stingers.
mm,
Awesome.
With fire.
It's like a nightmare insect incarnate, but it's, you know, at least it's peaceable, right?
yeah, yeah, um, yeah. He definitely has uh, yeah. The professor is very interested. Is very intrigued. Like he actually asks if he can like record and photograph the creature for like his for
Ask.
research purposes. You know,
Asking. That's adorable.
Absolutely.
yeah. Well, he's generally pretty polite. Like
Yeah.
he's it's like you've met people who are assholes or who have like very hidden agendas or whatnot. He's pretty earnest about what who he is and what he's doing, and he does try to be polite. Or probably the reason that Shadow trusted him in the beginning and they became friends is, he didn't he wasn't he wasn't a dick. He
Yeah.
wasn't one of those who was an asshole. Um, so uh, the he's like, it's like get some rest. I will have supplies for the expedition ready, and we'll get the temporary pass to fly over to Station 9. Uh, your ship should be fine there. The station we've lost contact with is actually in the Singing Rain, as well as the digs.
I think after on the next day, if you'll allow me, I'll probably see if I can attune my micro lab to him as well. Because I think I can
Oh
do.
yeah, yeah. He's heard of biohackers before.
Yeah, I can't remember. Let me
He
see.
probably has a few colleagues that are biohackers.
Let's see if I can figure out how many people.
I think it's up to 6.
3 plus my key ability, so it would be
Oh
7.
yeah,
Yeah,
7. Okay,
cool.
all right. I'm thinking of something else, I guess, but some other calculation. But I think at this point, we're at 10:37 right here, so this may be a good time to wrap it up, so that next week hopefully we'll have JJ back, and Big Al will be able to be part of this, because you will probably have some actual combat encounters or something. Well, potentially anyway. I mean, you don't always choose to avoid shit like that, but uh,
So
let's. Hmm?
I was looking at my micro lab, and it literally says if I want to identify a creature, I can use my custom micro lab within 60 feet. Uh, and if it's living, I use physical or life science. If it's dead, I use physical science.
Yep.
Uh, but it says you can attempt this check untrained regardless of DC, and you always treat your dice roll as a 20. What? That's Jesus. That's. I didn't realize how good that was. Look, I just automatically roll a. Let's see, a 33 to identify anything within 60 feet. Okay.
That would give you a significant advantage in knowing what you're facing down.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sorry,
but
I didn't see that part before. I had seen like how many people I can target and all that, and that was just right in the middle of it.
all right, cool. All right, so let's everybody start sending me your Players' Choice Awards votes, and we'll get sign off started. Who wants to start us off here?
I will. I can do it.
All right.
What up, everyone? I'm Sassy McNasty 69. I played Oliver Byrne, the bear who is just a bear, and a biotechnician and biohacker, and you know all the sort. Uh, wow. Yeah, I was just realizing that my outro is gonna be a lot shorter now. So you can catch me on Wednesdays for Hinch to Minch as Ken Butler, aka Crash, the super speed, super strong guy that can only run in straight lines. That's great. He's got a girlfriend with a robot body, and she's awesome. She's strong like him, and you know she has a temper, and it's perfect. They're great together. It's cool. Uh, on and then yeah, it skips all the way to Saturday. This Saturday will be Spark of Fate. Should be the final episode. If I have to do it in two, that's fine, but it should be the final one. And every other Saturday for Jess's Grab Bag, if it's Legion Championship Wrestling, it's Bear the Boulder Breaker. Or if we do Faulty Comics Presents as Kingfisher. Uh, and whatever else rolls around, if there's something new I can try out, it's always cool. It's really fun. And for Sundays before this game, you can usually catch me on Cosmos as right now a Key Frostwalker Dragon Instinct Barbarian from the Frozen North, and Samir Amari, the Cold Domain Cleric under Pelora, also from the Frozen North. And yeah, we're about to raid a Basilica that has an anti-magic field around it. We have to take that down. It's like a whole fucking Payday 2 heist style. Let's go. But yeah, that's everything now. Hey.
Awesome. Who wants to take next?
I'll go.
Okay.
So I'm Justin, also known as Baloney Jelly, also known as Tiz. This is the only game that I'm in any sort of live stream for. You can catch us Sunday nights, obviously. I do have several other games that I do play privately with private groups. I host host Saturday D&D 3.5E. Got a homebrew campaign that I run, and play Shadowrun missions every Wednesday. I play a Shadowrun campaign every Thursday, both of them 5th edition. And it sounds like every other Friday, pretty soon here, I'll be playing Shadowrun 6th edition, hosted by my lovely wife, Vanessa. And other than that, that's about it. I do have a shout out to my father. If you're still watching this, happy Father's Day again.
Awesome. Yeah, and hey, that goes for me too. Happy Father's Day to everybody that's out there that
Yeah.
is a father. Um, who is next up?
I'll go.
All right.
Greetings. I'm the Computer King, the supervillain of streaming. You've caught me playing Shadow, the cat man who just so happens to have been to Castroville once. Probably stayed there for a while because it takes a while to recover from going from 1/3 of a G planet to one.
Oof.
Ouch. So I'm also in Cosmos, where I play Eliadris Night Eye, the monk elf, who's getting ready to storm the lower half of a magicless basilica, and Corin Deadblade, the wizard slash fighter slash another hat that he's just about to put on, who's going to be infiltrating the top half. And on Wednesdays, I run from hench to mensch, where I run some henchmen through the ranks of supervillainy. And the last time they did their first gratuitous murders. So that's fun.
The gratuity.
I didn't.
So whenever I can, I'm on my own stream, the Computer King, usually playing Magic Gathering Arena. Okay, I'm done.
All right. That leaves one last, besides myself anyway.
Which would be me.
Yeah.
I'm Scott, Psych, whatever, call, whatever. I don't care. Alright, I played chess tonight. Didn't do much. I horribly flew, and then I listened to a bunch of people talk a bunch of sciencey, boring stuff. I like shoot.
You ordered drinks and you ordered and paid for drinks too. So
Yeah, that too.
yeah, you you are the life of the party.
Yep. Okay, what else am I in? Oh, tomorrow night on Fire Strike, I'm gonna be Xander. I play Xander, an android dude that, well, he's trying to decide if he wants to do both jobs or tell the one chick that, according to the people he's with, is his girlfriend or wife or I don't know. But he's in a conundrum. We'll figure that out tomorrow. And then I'm also on the Instruments on Wednesday. I play night. I do all the shopping for the group. And my next shopping adventure is to go find ammunitions for my friend, since he decided to shoot a lot of people last time.
That happens when you're a supervillain.
Yeah, I gotta go get him some more ammo. Let's say, the other thing is whenever we do the Saturday Night Justice grab bags, we do Flesh from Fire. I played Jake. So last week, I should have stuck to driving because now I'm unconscious on the ground. Did not think that one through. Oh well. If we ever do Legion class wrestling, I will play Adam Mason, who will be the manager to Bear the Boulder Breaker. And we're going to get him a title shot eventually. That's my plan. Yeah, and that's everything.
Awesome. Well, that brings it back to me. First of all, bookkeeping. Everybody, give yourself 100 experience points, and tonight's Player's Choice Award. And if you're new to the program and you haven't watched before, I this is how I let the players reward each other for making the game fun. they send me votes as to who they thought was the, most fun or had the best idea or made the scene live for them. Um, and then I give that person extra experience points. And tonight's winner is Shadow. So our
Woo!
captain here gets an extra 50 experience points on top of the 100 that everybody gets. And I'm I, I uh, I know tonight seemed a bit halting and a bit sort of like uh, stop and go. That will be a lot less so next week. This was the week where I'm like, I don't know what they want to do next, and I'm not going to try to railroad them into doing anything specific. I'm going to let them figure out what they're trying to do. So there was a lot of stuff I was trying to come up with on the fly because I didn't know if they were going to stay on Akaton, if they were going to fly to this planet or another planet, or if they were going to leave the system. Next, since we have more direction and I know what they're doing now I can plan around that. Next week will be a little bit more tight and put together. Um, I am the Jesta King Zarad, and you can find me here on Monday nights for our flagship show, Fire Strike. My favorite group of space terrorists and space pirates and never do wells, which is in its fourth season. That's a show that has a lot of layers. That's what every show should end up kind of becoming in my eyes, one that has a lot of history built up. This one's fairly new-ish, so it's still building that sort of like history, but eventually it'll get to that point too. Um, you can also catch me here on Saturday nights. This next Saturday night I won't be here because they're wrapping up Spark of Fate, and uh, well, my character died last last episode, and that was clearly my fault, and it was clearly done for the purposes of the narrative because that made sense for what the character was doing at the time. But you can catch me here on other Saturday nights for Just as Grab Bag, where I run a multitude of different things, whatever kind of systems that I think are fun and interesting. We reference the Flesh and Fire, our apocalypse world setting, which is batshit crazy. If you like Mad Max and you like the idea of Mad Max with where we follow the evil characters, the bad guys, and with a lot of psychic fuckery thrown in, that's a good show to go to, because where else are you going to find a madman who roided out meth head wearing a cow mask, calling himself Beef, and wielding a chainsaw called Ass Destroyer, jumping between vehicles, screaming at the top of his lungs? Um, there's also the Legion Championship Wrestling game because yes, they did make a role playing game about wrestling, and we do that sometimes.
I love
Uh,
wrestling.
we also have, of course, you have been watching the Ballad of the Menagerie, which is set in the same universe as the Fire Strike, and
Oh,
they're sort of like newer problem solvers to the galaxy. Um, Most of the cast here, with the exception of Psychopathic, are actually not in the Fire Strike. Psychopathic being the sole player who is in both. So it's a different dynamic with a different group. I've got some other things I'm cooking up, some ideas that we're gonna, for different time slots. We just lost a couple of shows because they ended for one reason or another. But there will be replacements, so you might see me doing some stuff on Tuesdays or Fridays. But we'll keep everybody posted on that. Make announcements as we go. Post it up on our Twitch page for once we've got some things ironed out. But with that said, let's get a happy Father's Day and get out of here.
all right.
Happy
Happy
Father's
Father's
Day!
Happy Father's
Day.
Day.